Hi, everyone. I'm Valarie and welcome to my podcast, Dancing in the Rain with Valarie. Dancing in the rain means living our lives to the fullest, even when we are dealing with difficult situations or feel like we are in the middle of a storm. I am honored to have Liz Curran and Karla Giroux with me today. I met Liz in 2018 when my husband Mark was battling stage 4 esophageal cancer. She introduced me to an amazing community of people, wonderful organizations, and books that gave me so much knowledge, insight, and hope. Two of those books are Radical Remission and Radical Hope by Dr. Kelly Turner. Karla is a cancer survivor with an amazing story. She was one of my teachers during the Radical Remission workshop, and I am so thrilled to have Liz and Karla here with me today to share their stories and Radical Remission knowledge. So I would like to start this episode by having Liz and Karla just introduce themselves and tell us how they got involved with this community and how cancer has affected their lives or lives of loved ones. So Karla, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Valarie. So I started my whole cancer journey back in 2003. I was 37 years old and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So it was an early stage, but it was a stage 3B. So I had a bilateral mastectomy, chemotherapy, radiation, got through all of that in 9 months, and then took 5 years of tamoxifen. And at the age of 37, my children were 5 and 2. So I just wanted to get through it and get back to raising my children and to my fairly new career that I had going on. And I didn't really know about any other way to do it other than the conventional way. I did try a little bit of acupuncture and I got a little pushback on that in the beginning. And, so there were some things I tried, but I sort of put it behind me and moved on with my life and moved on with raising my family and with my career. And I had a pretty big career over the years, international travel and a lot of stress and a lot of stuff going on in my life. But I thought I was living a good life and a fairly healthy life. And when I hit my 10-year cancerversary, I thought I was safe. I thought, no chance it's coming back now. I don't have to worry about it anymore. In the beginning, it was always that little thing in the back of your mind. Like you get any little ache or pain, you think, oh God, what's that? Is it back? But it got to the point where it wasn't a thought. But at 11 years from my original diagnosis, I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. And even the symptom of that didn't dawn on me that it could have been cancer. I started feeling a numbness on my left shin, and eventually my leg would give out. I'd try to be doing a lunge in the gym and I couldn't hold myself up. And then eventually I started falling down, like my leg would just collapse out from underneath me. So a chiropractor said, well, maybe you've got a pinched nerve. Let's work on it. And he was my regular guy. And so we worked on it. And eventually he said, you know what, if it's still going on, maybe you should go to an orthoped, get an x-ray. Orthoped did the x-ray of the leg, the knee, nothing going on there, and sent me to a neurologist. And the neurologist took an MRI and called me. He did the MRI on a Thursday, said, results next week. Again, I'm not thinking cancer at all. Calls me on Friday and says, given the history, your medical history, we see some really suspicious things on your spine. I've called your general practitioner. She's expecting to hear from you. You should call her now. And I called her. And of course that's when it hit me. Mm-hmm. Like, oh crap. Then when I called her, she said, I'd really like you to come in and see me and bring your husband. Double crap. Mm-hmm. And it was a Friday afternoon. And so there was nothing more we could really do about it. But cancer was all over my spine, all through my bones of my torso, hips, pelvis, ribs, clavicle, it was everywhere. And it was an excruciating weekend. But the good news was we just happened to have our family therapist scheduled for that Saturday and decided to leave the kids at home. They were preteens at this point. And we left them at home and we went and saw her and told her this news and talked to her about it. And we'd known her for years. And she's like, don't tell the kids anything until you've had a chance to find out more, until you know what the prognosis is. So finally got to talk to my oncologist who wanted to treat me as if I was a new patient because it had been so long since I visited him. But when I talked to him on the next Monday or Tuesday, the first thing he said, well, one of the first things he said to me was, "This is a chronic disease we can manage." And that was a beautiful thing, because I said, all right, I'm going to manage the hell out of this. And that began my journey of doing absolutely everything I could to overcome cancer. Because not only did I have 2 children and a great career and a loving husband, but I had a desire and a goal and a knowing that I was going to live to be 100 years old, healthy and sane, still doing my yoga, wearing my high heels, and living my best life. So a metastatic diagnosis, a stage 4 terminal diagnosis, was not in my cards. I wasn't going to have it. So I did lots of things to help myself overcome cancer.
And when were you first introduced to the book Radical Remission?
Yeah, so it was 2014 when I was diagnosed, and Dr. Turner wrote Radical Remission, and I believe it was published in 2015. And I think it was either late 2015, early 2016 before I found it. I do have one of the original hardcover versions of it, not the reprinted paperback, but it definitely was, when I got it, something that I looked at. And just, if you look at the index, right, the chapters are named for each of the factors. And I kind of went through and went, check, check, check. I got that. I've done that. That one feels good to me. And then I went, ooh, like releasing suppressed emotions. What's that about?
Mm-hmm.
And so there were definitely some that I felt I needed to dig in a little bit deeper on. But it also gave me a lot of, hope to know that I was on the right path, that I was doing some of these things already. And actually the cancer responded within 3 months. So late 2014 is when I got the diagnosis. I started the hormone blocking drugs. So mine's a hormone receptor positive cancer. Started the drugs and all of these lifestyle changes. And I kind of did the lifestyle changes pretty much cold turkey all at once. We're doing it all. And it was difficult. There were tears involved. I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It was not easy. And, I can remember going, I just want the cookie. And my husband would say, just eat the cookie then. I'm like, no, I can't. You got it. You don't understand. So there were lots of moments like that. But within 3 months of the lifestyle changes and the meds, the cancer was receding. I could tell the difference in my leg. It wasn't collapsing out from underneath me anymore. It wasn't as numb as it had been. And the scans showed stable. The way the cancer was growing for me was that it actually was pinching a nerve. It was growing in such a way in the nerve passed through the vertebral body, the bone in the lower spine, and it was growing and closing off that nerve pathway. So it was pinching a nerve. And it was receding because it was no longer pinching the nerve as much. And then, the stable scans were definitely good news.
I just wanted to touch on something you said, and it's so important. You mentioned hope. Mm-hmm. And what came to mind when you said that was when Liz gave me the first book, Radical Remission, my husband, Mark, was battling stage 4 cancer. When Liz gave me the second book, Radical Hope, I was dealing with my own breast cancer diagnosis. So in addition to the practical healing factors that people can implement into their everyday lives, there's also such a sense of hope that comes from these books that is really important when dealing with any kind of, not just cancer, but anything serious in your life. So I'm going to go over to Liz, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Liz Curran. I am a friend of Valarie's after all these years, all of our struggles together. So in 2014, while Karla was dealing with her diagnosis, unbeknownst to me, because we didn't know each other yet, my sister was diagnosed with inflammatory breast cancer, and she had basically diagnosed in January and did chemo, mastectomy, radiation, and on her last day of radiation got the word that it had metastasized. So it was Labor Day weekend, and we were going up to visit to surprise her with like a party for the end of treatment. And before we got there, we got the news that it had spread. So we instead decided to just have a pep talk kind of weekend. So we had bought her back then that was the Pandora bracelets were really popular. And I had taken each kid to the store to get a charm. This was before we thought it was a celebration. Had my mom pick one, my other sister pick one. We all had decorated this bracelet for her. So I was really excited to bring it up and give it to her. And I was really happy at that point when she had such bad news that we could kind of give this to her. She lived in Massachusetts. I lived in New Jersey. So it really she loved it and she kept it with her while we weren't able to be with her physically. And then she did end up passing away in December. So her treatment was very conventional and it was really hard to be away from her because we were, 6-7 hour drive away from each other, but we talked multiple times a day, every single day. And I ended up, I think, we're always talking all the time on the phone. But at the time, I think I became the role of the person where she kind of confided and talked about her like real emotions and about her fears because it was on the phone and she didn't have to see my face. She could just talk. And for me, it was incredibly difficult, but I was also, very glad that she was able to confide in me and somebody. And I think it just prepared me in such a way to be able to speak intimately about something like cancer that is so hard for the layperson who isn't familiar with it to ask someone how they feel. Or, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to make them upset thinking about it, but it makes the patient so lonely. And
everybody's already thinking about it.
Yes, it's the elephant in the room.
Right, exactly.
So just ask someone how they're feeling, and if they don't want to talk about it, they're just going to give you, I'm okay. But if they want to talk, they'll talk. And so that's really what my biggest takeaway from her whole experience is learning how to be kind of an emotional support, even if I wasn't able to be there for every doctor's appointment, although I did go to several. And one of the times I remember being up there for her treatment, we were with her doctor and she was asking, they were starting to talk. She was in chemo and they were starting to just introduce the concept of mastectomy, however many months out. And she had questions about it. Oh, when is this going to be? When am I going to meet this person? How am I going to? And they just stopped her right away. And she said, we're going to do this part right now. We'll talk about that later. But human nature is hope, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to think about the next step and see the path. Mm-hmm. And when she was blocked with that, it was very discouraging because she was like, well, why can't we talk about that next step? What's hiding behind that door, Right. And so that to me kind of really resonated when I went into learning about the radical remission factors, because the empowerment factor is asking your doctor one more question past comfort, right? Mm-hmm. Making sure that, if you are told, let's talk about it later, and you want to talk about it now, talk about it now. Ask the difficult questions, feeling empowered to really advocate for yourself. And obviously we can talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but that really struck me. And then after she had passed, I was talking to one of my friends, a good friend of mine, and I was obviously emotional at the time. And I was just like, there has to be something else. What else is there besides just chemo? What is there? It can't be the only thing that's ever been invented for cancer. And when I found out about this book, and it was through one of our friends, John Henry, a radical remission survivor in his own right, he taught me all about radical remission. And I opened the book, same thing, looked at the table of contents and saw all the factors. And it was like a bolt of lightning, went through my body. I was like, this is the answer that I've been looking for. And I had been coaching for probably about 3 years at that point, and decided to attend the teacher training so that I could incorporate the healing factors into my coaching practice. But I really didn't create a path of I'm going to work with cancer patients. I was just like, this is the path that everybody can be on because it's so healing. And for myself, having a sister who went through cancer and very similar, body type and whatnot, she was almost 10 years older than me, but approaching the age now where she was when she got diagnosed. So it's been weighing on me very heavily this past year, what's going to happen. And all I can keep coming back to is I've been doing the work. I've been following these factors. I've been making the changes, and she did not have that opportunity. So hopefully, I don't know whether I would have been diagnosed or not, but hopefully we'll go down the not path for now and see if that was something that helped change my course.
So, Liz, can you tell all of our listeners who have no idea what Radical Remission is and what it's all about, how it started and what it's all about?
Sure. To start out, I'll just read the definition that's in the book. It's in the introduction of both books. And this will define for you what a radical remission survivor is. And there are 3 types: someone who heals without conventional treatment, someone who first tries conventional treatment, which does not lead them into a remission. So then they try alternative treatments, which do lead to a remission, or they use a combination of conventional and alternative treatments at the same time in order to outlive a dire prognosis with less than 25% chance of survival. So what's important about that is that Radical Remission Project, which is the business behind the Radical Remission books and products, is that there's absolutely, we're not against conventional medicine. We're not pro, only alternative medicine. Any treatment is okay with us. Whatever you feel using your intuition guides you to heal, you need to follow. We have all kinds of resources and different types of doctors and naturopaths and integrative doctors and conventional oncologists that love lifestyle medicine and different people in our circle, that this really can resonate deeply with the conventional medicine system. It's just not to say that they don't have a place. The place that they have, when we talked about the empowerment factor, is that is the role that they play in one aspect of your healing. So how are you choosing to build that team and implement, what you need to implement in order to heal? So that is what a radical remission survivor is. And Dr. Turner, back in the day, she was a Harvard graduate and went to Cal Berkeley for her oncology social work master's degree. And she was working in oncology social work. And she said she got really tired of going to funerals and she needed something. And one day she needed something to keep going because it was a very trying job for her. And so one day she heard about this term spontaneous remission, and this man Shin Teriyama and his story really stopped her in her tracks. And if you've read Radical Remission, or if you do, you'll read more about his story. But she was like, why doesn't everybody know who this man is? Why isn't he on the news? He spontaneously, healed from his cancer. What did he do? And so she went home from work that night and she started doing research like crazy and trying to figure out, what was the story behind this man. And she found that there was over 1,000 cases documented in medical journals and in the world that had been considered spontaneous remission, and nobody was researching them. So that made her mad, because here she is working with oncology patients in a mental health perspective. So she went back to Cal Berkeley and said, I want to get my PhD. I want to study what goes on between when they left the hospital and when they heal. And what are they doing so that we can kind of crack the code to this spontaneous remission, like a good researcher would. So they said, if you want to study something no one else has ever studied, go for it. So she got sponsored by the American Cancer Society. She traveled all over the world for 2 years, interviewed and researched over 1,000 cases for the first book. And their healers, to learn more about what they did outside of conventional treatment. And what she found was there were over 75 actual factors, research factors that came up through her research process. But when she whittled it all down, at first it was the 9 factors, then it became the 10. Every single case that she researched or interviewed did every single one of these factors in some way. Some had more depth than others. Some really needed to be dug into a lot more deeply. And so everybody has kind of their spectrum of each one, but it really does give a lot of hope to people when you hear what these 10 factors are and how kind of, they're just lifestyle changes. And while it sounds simple, and it's not, and not to take away from how difficult it can be to change, they are things that you can do to complement your treatment, whatever your treatment type is. And Karla and I, we can talk a bit more about this later, but we have taken things to the next level and started a community for people who are like-minded, that really want to have this radical remission mentality, looking forward, being inspired. What's next? What can I do to aid my healing? And how can I be a part of the solution rather than just being at the will of their medical team?
I recently took the online Radical Remission workshop with Liz and Karla. Can you please let everyone know what the healing factors are and a little bit about each one?
Yeah, sure. So there's a total of 10. And in the first book, Radical Remission, there were 9. So when she wrote Radical Hope, she had looked back at the research, and some of the Radical Remission survivors had come to her and said, why isn't exercise on this list? Exercise, believe it or not, did not fall on the first list because it wasn't considered exercise to these people. Some of them came home from the hospital on hospice with no treatment, and they were in bed. So for them, the concept of exercise didn't quite fit, but movement did. So whether that's being stationary in your bed and then all of a sudden being able to sit up, and then maybe a week or 2 later, you're able to take a step. Then you can go to the bathroom. Then you can walk down the hall. And then all of a sudden you're walking around the block. And so these little baby steps that would bring people propelled forward really is defined as physical movement. But the concept of exercise kind of just envelops that when she talks about the factor. And really, it's just doing more than you would normally. If you can continue to grow and change and add to that, that really falls under that category.
And then the next one is spiritual connection. And spiritual connection is all about really deepening any spiritual connection you have or establishing a spiritual connection. And this doesn't really have anything to do with religion. Some people are religious and spiritual. Some people are spiritual and religious. Some people are one or the other, not both. Some are none. But when you believe there's a higher power and you get in touch with something bigger than yourself, that's what this is all about. And this can be achieved certainly through prayer and meditation and those kinds of things, but also just by being in nature. You can connect with something bigger than yourself when you look at the big wider world and the beauty that's there, or the little stuff that you see. And it can also be a creative outlet. Your spirituality can come through your creativity, whether it's painting or writing or dancing. Any of those things can be considered a spiritual outlet and a place for you to find your spiritual connection.
So the third one, excuse me, is empower yourself. And that's the one I just referred to briefly about really the concept of becoming the CEO of your own health, making sure you're in the driver's seat, you build your team, you put on the team, members on the team that you really want to have the collaboration, and then making sure that you and then can be the boss and ask the tough questions and get the second opinions and different things like that. So I guess the next one I'll pass to Karla. That is
positive emotions. And this one was easy for me because I am such a positive, optimistic person to begin with. But those increasing positive emotions is necessary for a lot of people. And certainly when you get a diagnosis, that's hard. And that's, you can get really down and you can find yourself in depression. But if you can just find even 5 minutes a day to bring something positive in that's going to make you laugh or smile or feel joy, that is such a boost. One of my favorite quotes from Dr. Turner is that positive emotions are like rocket fuel for the immune system.
Definitely.
And it releases a flood of those hormones that really do boost your immune system. And I'll just say that right now, that all of these factors, all 10 of them, are about boosting your immune system to get your body back to a state where it can start to do the healing of itself that it's supposed to be able to do.
Right. Yep. So the next one on the list, number 5, is following your intuition. And this one is a little bit harder for some people because in this day and age, we don't use our intuition as strongly as we had in the past. And so it's tapping into that inner voice that really can truly help guide us to make decisions. Oftentimes, as you'll read in the books, the people that she interviewed would have something would change after the diagnosis. They would start hearing a voice, like an inner voice speaking to them about, like one of the examples she had was somebody kept hearing the message, get out of the house, move out of the house, move out of the house. And he didn't want to move, but eventually through the process, he ended up moving to live with his daughter. And it turned out that his house was full of black mold and he needed to be out of that house to be able to heal. So he was able to make his remission came to him because he listened to his intuition and moved out of the house. So it's just tapping into that inner voice. That could come through, again, meditation. It could come in through journaling. If you're just going to journal a whole bunch, free journaling and see what kind of messages come up. We have a nice activity we like to suggest where you write down a question on a piece of paper on before you go to bed, and you fold it up and you put it under your pillow. And then when you wake up, read the question again, open a journal, and just write as much as you can for the answer and see what kind of came up with your subconscious while you were sleeping. So that's a really fun one. I think anybody can do that anytime. Again, these are all accessible to anyone at any stage of their life. But that one is really good. There's ways to practice, trying to guess who's calling when your phone rings, or, guess which floor the elevator is going to stop on. Just trying to tap in and exercise. A lot of these things we refer to kind of like exercising like a muscle. So the more you do it, the easier it will become, and the more in tune you will be to that factor.
Yeah, and the next one is releasing suppressed emotions. And this one can be difficult for people to understand. This is where we need to dig into the feelings that we may have stuffed, the emotions that we may not have acknowledged and dealt with and that we need to deal with. It's also learning to not continue to do that stuffing. And I always check myself. I know when I'm clenching my fists or biting my tongue, clenching my jaw, I can tell that there's something I'm trying to hold in. And that's a signal to me that I need to release it and let it go. I need to let that emotion come through me, acknowledge it, feel it fully, and let it go. Because when you hold on to emotions, certainly in traditional Chinese medicine, they believe that a blocked energy is coming from held emotions, and that's blocking your chi or your life force energy. And that the opposite, when you have free flow through your energy fields, that you are in health. But releasing suppressed emotions, it's not just about digging into what have I held on to over the years, or it could be some trauma related stuff that you need to deal with. It could just be that you're pining for the past. Like, I wish things were the way they used to be. You get the old story of the high school football quarterback hero that wishes, that he was still the glory days, right? Isn't Bruce Springsteen a Jersey guy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's his song, right? So it's all about it's fine to have those memories, but if you're wishing you were still there, then that means you're not living in this moment.
Stuck in the past.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And being stuck is not a good thing. Just think about that. If you're stuck in the past, your emotions are stuck, your things are stuck in your body, and you want that free flow of energy and feeling. And some people do need to work on trauma. And when we talk about trauma, it's not just necessarily the violent trauma, some sort of violent episode in your life, or abuse or neglect or alcoholism. If you had a childhood, you had trauma. We all have little things that we might need to deal with. And I highly encourage anybody that gets a diagnosis to go to a therapist and work through some of their stuff. And this factor, while you don't have to have a therapist to work on it, it could be really beneficial to you and help you move forward faster.
So number 7 is changing your diet. And while some people might groan hearing that, really it is, the doctor says diet and exercise. Those two things are very key into healing anything. And changing your diet from a radical remission survivor perspective is all about cutting out processed foods and trying to eat a very clean way. But the way we like to make it memorable and easy to remember is reduce or eliminate meat, wheat, sweets, and dairy. So the meat, obviously, that's, up to you and your specific diagnosis as to what limitations you want to put on animal products. Some people go down more of that keto route and other people go down that vegan route. So somewhere, and sometimes we even have what we call ketotarians, which are people who are eating high fat, low carb diet, but with a vegan approach or plant-based approach, I guess is a better way to put it. So meat, then the sweets is about sugar. We want to reduce or eliminate, really just eliminate refined sugars and anything that's made with them to help clean out the system. The wheat part is not necessarily wheat specific. It's more about the processed foods and the processed grains. Just because it rhymes, it goes well with the meat, wheat, sweets, and dairy. But the wheat piece is really about trying to, reduce the processed foods, maybe go gluten-free or low gluten, just to avoid genetically modified foods and different things that are kind of more processed in the American diet these days. And then there's dairy. That there's a lot of evidence to, the connection with dairy and cancer diagnoses. So that's one to not easily to give up, but easily say that's a hard line for me personally.
One thing I'll add, Liz, is that the Radical Remission survivors didn't have one single diet that they all followed. Those were the overall sweeping trends. And it's really important not to get too caught up on this one, because you need to follow your intuition and figure out what's right for you and what's right for your body type. So,
yes.
Yeah. All right. And the next one is herbs and supplements. And so this is the last of the 3 physical healing factors. So you've got movement, diet, and herbs and supplements. And the other 7 are emotional and spiritual factors. So I just wanted to point that out. And when it comes to the herbs and supplements, it's really important that you utilize a practitioner to help you with this one, because everybody is different. It's very bio-individual what your body needs. Even if you have a twin sister with the exact same cancer diagnosis, the 2 of you are going to need different supplements. And so it's really best to find a practitioner that can help you with testing and assessment. And then you start taking the supplements that are right for you, right for your diagnosis, right for your age and stage and health, and et cetera. So for the Radical Remission survivors that Dr. Turner interviewed and researched, some of them felt like this was kind of one of the last pieces of the puzzle that sort of put it together for them and brought it all together. But without a good foundation of nutrition, it isn't really a great idea to do diets and supplements, because that's like trying to put out a house fire with a squirt gun. So find a practitioner, and it can be an acupuncturist, an herbalist, a Chinese medicine doctor, a naturopath. There's many ways that you can go about finding a practitioner that can help you with this particular factor.
Yes, and I just would like to add to that, licensed practitioner, because
Good call.
There are a lot of people out there that can help you, but maybe the owner of your local health food store may not find that she has the certifications, but she has the knowledge, but she's also not a cancer oncologist. So having someone that knows your body and knows your meds and knows your labs and can really help find the deficiencies, that's really key.
And you know what, Liz, that reminded me that when you talk to your conventional oncologist and their conventional nutritionist, you're not going to get information about herbs and supplements necessarily. And they may even discourage you from taking herbs and supplements. But in Dr. Turner's research and the separate scientific studies say that most people, like it was in the 90 percentile, that are doing chemotherapy and supplements, there is no interaction. There is no problem with doing that. And so people have this mindset, certainly oncologists do, because they're not trained in nutrition or supplementation. So they just want you to stay away from things they don't know about. And they get all upset about the possible interaction or the fact that your vitamins and supplements are going to take away what they're trying to do with the chemotherapy. So.
All right, next one is number 9, one of my favorites, having strong reasons for living. And this one is really about having purpose, making sure you have a reason to get out of bed every day. Why are you here on this earth? It doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be yours and important enough to you that you'll do it. Some people feel that that's, making sure they're here long enough to see their kids graduate from high school, or they really want to finish writing their book. So there's a big array of what that means. It doesn't matter what it is. It just matters that you have a purpose. And we have some pretty cool activities that we do in the workshop to help people kind of hone in on what that looks like.
Yeah. And then the last one, the 10th factor, although there's no order of importance here either.
Right.
They can be done in any order. One isn't more important than the other. But the last one we're talking about today is increasing social support. And this one, while you may feel like you've got plenty of friends and loved ones around you, it's not so much about the quantity of people, because there are some people that only have one really close friend, and that's fine. It's your perception of what you need for social support, right? It's if one friend is enough for you, great. But if you're somebody that needs 30 friends, that's okay too. And really, this one is more about the receiving of love and support. And so many of us are so good at giving. We can give easily. We give love and support. We're often not very good at receiving that love and support. We've got this mentality that I can do it. I'm strong enough. I got this. I don't need any help. It's not about being strong enough to do something on your own. Really, it's a stronger perspective to say, I need help. I need somebody to help take care of me right now. And when you're going through some treatments, you really do need some help, and you need to let some things fall off your list or give them to somebody else to do for you. So learning to accept love and support is really important. I have a little anecdote story of my own from my first diagnosis, and I was going through chemotherapy after my surgery. And my girlfriend came over with bucket and mop and all her cleaning supplies, and she wanted to clean the house for us. And remember, I was 37, had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and the husband was busy taking care of the kids, and I was trying to recover. And she wanted to clean the house for us. And I thought that was wonderful. And my husband was like, absolutely not. No way. He kept taking the mop and the broom and the bucket away from her, and he wasn't going to let her do it. And I had to say to him, stop. Let her clean the house. You're busy trying to take care of me and the kids, and somebody needs to clean the house. And why not let her do something she wants to do for us? So there was a little bit of a learning for both of us in how to receive love and support in that. And I encourage people to make a list of the things that other people could help you with. Make a list of the things that might fall lower on your priority list. Like maybe it still needs to be done, but it doesn't need to be done by you. And then when somebody says, how can I help? You've got your list.
I know a lot of people struggle with that, and I used to really struggle with that. And when that came to my attention was when Mark was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I just always feel like I'm such a strong, independent person. I could do everything. I could take care of my husband with stage 4 cancer and raise 4 kids and clean the house and do everything, which is true. But at the same time, when I met Liz and she, brought all of these people into my life who were offering help for me or for Mark. And Mark was also very stubborn and had the same mentality that we can get through this on our own. And we had to have a conversation, and I said, people are trying to help us and we have to accept the help. And that was the first time for both of us that we've actually done that in our lives in general. And even accepting a meal train while he was going through chemo, and it was so amazing. And he actually, for the first time, I've never seen him like that, where he just was so overwhelmed with gratitude that people were dropping off food at our house. And it was the first time in his life that he let somebody help him. And he said, this is amazing. Look at the community we live in. I can't believe how many people care and are dropping off food or, offering to help us raise money for natural treatments. And there was just such an amount of love surrounding us that we wouldn't have even experienced if we didn't let it in. So it's really important to let it in. And I know that some people like myself and Mark can be stubborn, but it's really important that, like you said, if people are offering to help, they're doing it because they want to.
Right.
Nobody's going to show up at your house with a mop and a broom if they don't want to clean your house.
Right.
They want to, and it actually makes them feel good. So just accept the help.
Yeah. Dr. Turner says that if you don't allow people to help you, you're denying them that good feeling that you get when you're helping.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Personally, I really feel that the healing factors discussed in both books can help anyone, not just those diagnosed with cancer, live a healthier lifestyle. And just keeping it real for a minute, I know after hearing all of those healing factors, it can sound overwhelming at first. But as Karla mentioned, everyone's plan will be different. You have to follow your intuition. And another thing that Karla said that really hit me was that some of the factors were easy for her. She was already implementing these things into her life. She was checking the boxes, but then others she realized she had to work on. So that happened for me as well. And when I read the book, it happened. And then it really came to my attention when I took the workshop and we talked about it on Zoom with the other people in the class. Exercise was one that comes very easy to me because I teach dance, I take yoga every week. So that one was a box that I could easily check off. But when we got to spiritual connection, I realized that that was definitely something I needed to spend more time on. And one thing I wanted to mention about that, because I said that this can sound overwhelming, as soon as I saw and heard spiritual connection, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to every day sit down and meditate for an hour and I just can't, or I'll forget or whatever. And the one thing that stuck with me during the workshop was when you talked about deep breathing. You can call it deep breathing exercises, but it is a meditation, and the coolest thing was when you mentioned doing it at a red light. I loved that because I know for myself and a lot of people out there, when we get to a red light, we reach for our phones. Do I have an email? Do I have a text? Do I have a Facebook notification? But if you use a couple seconds or a couple minutes to do a deep breathing exercise, inhale for 5 seconds, hold it for 2 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, it's like an immediate reset. You just feel calm. You're in the moment. You're not bombarding your brain with your phone. And, if you do that throughout the day, which I have started to do, it is considered meditation and it has really helped me just reconnect. And it's such a quick, practical thing that everybody can do.
Yeah, for people that aren't meditators, that haven't done it before, that's a great accessible way to start doing it. And that deep breath does just bring you back to the moment, and it resets your nervous system too. So it gets you out of any, heightened state and back down into that rest and repair state. So any line you're standing in, any pause in activity, instead of grabbing your phone, grab your breath.
Even I noticed if I'm in a waiting room for an appointment, any type of appointment,
perfect.
Instead of reaching for my phone, I'll just sit there and do deep breathing exercises, and I immediately feel more calm and just more in the moment. And the importance of that is for everybody listening to understand, to not get overwhelmed by, even just the title of one of the healing factors. Don't be like me and look at spiritual connection and be like, oh God, I have to start this whole spiritual practice. It's not like that. And that's one of the things that I love about Radical Remission and what I've learned through the book and the workshop is that for each healing factor, there is such a practical way that everybody can implement these into their lives.
And it's about starting where you are and taking the next step. And we talk about, when we do the game plan in the workshop, this, Valarie, we talk about setting micro goals or taking baby steps. So you don't have to go from never meditating to sitting for an hour on a cushion in a cross-legged position.
Right. When I took the Radical Remission workshop and I heard Karla's story, I was so inspired. And I would like to know what both of your favorite Radical Remission stories are.
Ooh, our favorite Radical Remission stories. There are so many good ones that give so much hope.
So the one that I love the most, just off the top of my head now, is there's a great story about a woman named Sarah Ann. And she was in the factor in the book Radical Remission for increasing positive emotions. And she was a single mom with a young daughter, and she ended up getting a diagnosis, and she was terrified. and her parents had passed and her grandparents had passed, and she felt really alone. She was really scared. So that night she went to the video store. So you can tell back in the day that, you know, dating ourselves here, she went to the video store and she rented all of the comedians that she could find, because she remembered somebody saying how laughter really scientifically can heal. So she got, you know, an Eddie Murphy movie and a bunch of other stand-up comics, and she went home and she started to watch the videos. And she said at first she was crying hysterically, and then eventually the crying turned into laughter, because at first she was crying so loud she couldn't even hear the comedian, and then she would, you know, calm down a little bit and start to hear the jokes, and then she really released a lot just through the laughter. And she could tell that it had this healing power in her body. And so what she ended up doing was deciding with her daughter, after she had to tell her daughter, excuse me, what was going on, they decided to have daily play dates for at least 5 minutes a day, that they would do something together that would be fun, whether it was dancing or singing or being silly, playing games. And then they decided that, you know, 5 minutes a day, then build it like a muscle, a little more every day, and bringing that all the way to her chemotherapy sessions, where she started watching comedy during her chemo so that it was more effective. And then after she came clear with her diagnosis, she decided to start an organization called Comedy Cures. It's a nonprofit. And if you go to her website, you'll see the phone number. I think it's 1-800-HA-HA-HA-HA. And you can dial it. And every single day there's a new joke. And then you can hear kind of videos of a comedian in the, you know, if you just stay on hold and listen.
And what is the website?
comedycures.org, I believe.
Okay.
And it's a great resource for all things funny. If you need some tips on how to bring that into your everyday, that's a great website to access. And Sarah Ann is still here today, alive and well. And that's what makes these people so amazing and fill everybody with so much hope, is hearing their stories of overcoming the odds.
So for me, there's so many great stories. It's really hard to pick one. And, you know, they just keep coming. And I also often look for, you know, women with metastatic breast cancer so that I can relate to those stories. But from the books, the first story that really impacted Dr. Turner, I feel like, is a really powerful story for all of us. And it's the story of Shin Teriyama, a Japanese man who had I believe it was kidney cancer. And, you know, he went through chemotherapy in the hospital, and in Japan in that time, they didn't really tell the patient what was going on. They did tell his wife, but he didn't really know all of the details of it in the beginning. And it got to the point where Shin wanted to go home. And so he went home, and they basically said, all right, you know, here's hospice care for you. And Shin just began little by little finding things that really mattered to him. He played an instrument and he began playing again. I can't remember now if it was the cello. Thank you. And in the docuseries, he's featured his story and he's playing the cello, and it's really cool. But the docuseries was only available in 2020. Hopefully it will be out again soon on streaming, but not quite yet. But Shin played music, and he also started to wake up really early in the mornings, and he would listen to the birds. And so he started going out onto the roof of their building, you know, to watch the sunrise and to listen to the birds sing. And he started to actually sing. And what he realized he was doing later was actually activating his chakras and singing up the scale. And filtered water was a big thing for him too. So he utilized all 10 of these healing factors, but it's just an amazing story. And he's such a cute man. Like when you see him in the docuseries or you see the videos of him, he's this cute old Japanese man that just seems like he's living his best life. And he's so happy and he's so positive and he's just always smiling and he's enjoying his life. You know, he gave up that stressful corporate career that he was working in Japan. You think we overwork ourselves in America. Oh my gosh, did they ever? Now, you know, things have changed, but he found ways to resonate and to bring that healing to every moment in his life. And I just felt like, his story was the one that was really got Kelly started on her path down this road. And it's just such an impactful story for other people too. And he's alive and well to this day, at least as far as I knew from 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two books, Radical Remission and Radical Hope. What are the main differences between the two?
So Radical Remission was the first book that Dr. Turner wrote in 2015, and that was the 9 key factors. So that was her original research, and it was kind of, earth-shattering. It's a New York Times bestseller. For those of us that were or are living with cancer, it's huge. Radical Hope came out in 2020, and it's her follow-up to it where she's added the 10th factor. And we know from separate scientific studies how important exercise can be to our lifestyle, from a healing perspective, from getting through the treatment that you're doing, and even from prevention. So she went back and looked at her research, and she looked at the interviews that she'd done, and she re-interviewed some of those people and realized they were moving their bodies as much as they could when they could. But she also updated the scientific studies that she references, and she updated the stories that she included about the inspiring survivors. So there are now people that are considered radical remission survivors who not only have overcome cancer, but who have overcome other diseases as well. So there's a story about someone with ALS, and there's a story about someone with an autoimmune disorder, and I think MS. And so there's different people utilizing these healing factors now for different illnesses. And that was pretty inspiring and hope-filled too. So the new book is new stories, new scientific evidence, and that new factor.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add is that at the end of each chapter in Radical Hope, there's action steps and just a little bit more on how to implement it into your life. Part of the reason why, so Karla and I have been trained by Dr. Turner and her education team to teach the workshop. The reason the workshop exists is because people read Radical Remission and they said, great, these are great, now what? And so she created a workshop to help people learn how to actually implement them in their lives. And so now she can no longer do that because she's working on many things. So the teacher training is how, other people get trained to teach this workshop. And if you can't attend a workshop, then having the resources in Radical Hope to give you some direction on how to implement that into your life really can be kind of helpful and meaningful.
I just wanted to add that something I find fascinating is when I talk to somebody who has cancer and they will mention to me that they kind of intuitively just listen to an inner voice and kind of followed that through and how it helped them physically. So I was recently on a respite vacation with my family from an amazing organization called For Pete's Sake. And I talked to a woman who has been battling stage 4 cancer for 4 years. And one thing that she said to me, I asked her if she was in pain. And she said that she used to be in pain and she had a very stressful job and she did not want to quit her job, but it was almost like she was hearing a voice saying, you need to quit your job. So she did. And she said when she quit her job, the pain stopped. So I just wanted to mention that because, Radical Remission and Radical Hope, they give us guidelines and practical steps to implement these healing factors into our life. And as we mentioned a few times, it's like our bodies already know what we need. But sometimes this can add to the list and as a whole, just really be healing.
Yeah, it's mind, body, and spirit work. It's a holistic approach. And that's why 7 of the factors are about the spirit and 3 of them are physical. But when you look at these factors and you start to deepen your understanding of what you really need, you realize that your body's the last to know, right? It's stuff that was going on in your mind or in your spirit that caused what's happening in your body. And you need to listen to your body at the first sign of a symptom or something going on. And I think for me, listening to that numbness in my shin really led me to find the cancer as soon as possible. Now it sounded, like it was bad because it spread all over my bones and my torso. But when they went to do a biopsy, they poked me 6 times in the hip to try to get a biopsy of the bone to determine what type the cancer was. And they couldn't get enough. They just couldn't get a sample. So we treated it as if it was the original cancer. And in fact, it responded. But listening to our bodies is really, really important. And listening to our intuition and our spirit too. Some people have to leave a job. They have to change houses. They have to move across the country. They need to get a divorce. Whatever it is, it can be really hard stuff to do. But you need to listen to it and you need to put the fear aside and take those big steps forward sometimes.
A leap of faith. What do you both enjoy most about teaching Radical Remission workshops? How has teaching affected your life, or what is something important you've learned from teaching?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. First thing that comes to mind is resilience. And these people are, especially the people we work with, because they're coming from either a radical remission or another avenue similar to that. They find us because they want something different. And the amazing things, so Karla and I, ultimately, we do the workshops, but then after the workshops, we do group coaching for people that want to do a little more, and then sometimes one-on-one coaching with them, or different things come out from book clubs to, different studies where we dive much more deeply into books that have different activities. And through that process, these people become so close to each other and they feel like they're best friends in some cases, and they've never even met in person. And we just got to meet one of our clients this past week for the first time in 2 years. And that was like, I could cry. It was just so beautiful to be able to touch and hug her and kind of envelop her into my hug. And these people really connect, and they're so resilient. And it's really fascinating to see how in a community setting, our community anyway, it doesn't matter what your treatment is. It doesn't matter what your cancer is. It doesn't matter what stage you're at. There's no competition. Like the stage 1 people feel weird talking to the stage 4 people. Everybody is just there to progress and move forward together and support when they need support. Sometimes you're having a bad day. Sometimes you're having a good day. Hopefully there's someone with the opposite attitude in the group at that moment to inspire you. But it's really beautiful to see how connected they've become and how much the social support factor really is at the base. I mean, we didn't even know we were really starting a business until the business had formed around the situation. And the social support is really one of the key things that keeps people coming back together to learn more and do more. And it's been beautiful to watch how resilient they are.
I just wanted to add really quick, in addition to all of the knowledge, the Radical Remission knowledge I gained from the workshop, one of the things I loved was sharing resources with other people that took the course. We all know different websites, different books, different organizations, different, workout equipment, no matter what it may be. We all shared our own different, practical things that we were using in our lives with each other. And I really loved doing that during the workshop.
Yeah, that is a beautiful part of it because, as long as I've been doing this for my own journey, right, since 2014, I know I don't know everything that there is to know. And people do find the resources, and it's amazing. And having learned something from somebody else that they do that was helpful for them is makes it even more valid to try it. Like, okay, great. I've got somebody that knows and can tell me more about it. But, these people it is such a beautiful community, and it fills me up. It's such meaningful work to be able to help, to be able to utilize what I've learned on my journey and share that with others. And it's the give and the take, the learning from them as well. And it's just work that I don't know how to say it. I don't know. It's just so meaningful, and it is part of my path on my healing journey. So for me, doing this every day, it doesn't make me focus on my cancer, and it's not my cancer. It's just the cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognize that I want healing and health and wellness, and I want to focus on health and wellness. And so helping people to reframe things sometimes gives me such great pleasure, because it's like, can I invite you to think about that differently, right? Can you start to think about, instead of always thinking about cancer, think about health. Think about what you want to be able to do in a year or 5 years or whatever. And people can find that just like life-changing for them and inspiring. And it's an easy reframe. And it takes from my previous corporate background of change management, helping people to make change, and change is hard. So I get a lot of pleasure for myself in being able to help others, and in learning from them too, and staying on my healing path. It keeps it top of mind in a positive way for me.
One thing I thought was fascinating, I mean, I think your whole story is fascinating, and I think you're amazing, but one really important part of your story was something your doctor said, and not everyone that is getting diagnosed with cancer, unfortunately, not everybody has a doctor telling them that this is a manageable chronic illness. The word manageable can change your whole mentality and then moving forward. I know my husband was not told that it was manageable. It was just an immediate death sentence. I mean, it was bad. So I think it's just so important. And I really would, I would hope that, as time goes on, doctors catch on to how important that is. It's not just about the scans and the blood work. That's a very important piece of the puzzle. But just giving somebody the hope that this is manageable and you can live through this is life-changing.
It's huge. It was absolutely huge. I'm so grateful that my oncologist said that to me in the beginning, because it did give me a lot of hope. Like that weekend I spent thinking I was dying, like I'm leaving behind my children, and this is the end, and and then to have him say that to me, it was like, oh, okay, great. So it's like diabetes or something like that, like you
Right.
manage it. Now, I did fire him later, because he was the kind of doctor that wanted to manage it with drugs only. And he didn't want me to do supplements, and he didn't think I needed to eat the way I was eating, because I'd lost 20 pounds and I didn't really need to lose 20 pounds. And he kept telling me to go eat a brownie or drink a margarita. Like, no, that's not really where I want to go with this. So I did find an integrative oncologist to then support me in the lifestyle changes that I've made. But I agree with you that if all medical doctors could get their heads out of the statistics and the numbers and the expiration dates, they don't know. There's no way they know. And in some cases, it's an unfortunate self-fulfilling prophecy for people, right?
Oh, I have to tell you, I was just remembering a story Mark told me. I told Karla on the way over here today. We were at the vendor table when we did an event together, and he was telling me a story about a man who was diagnosed with cancer, and they gave him a year to live. And he said, can you believe 1 year to that day, that guy died, and when they looked at it, he didn't have cancer. And he was like, our body is so led by the mind. It's so important to have that positive attitude. And I just remember, obviously I was just sharing with her my experiences with Mark, but what a great revelation, and something that can give people so much hope is that, if we can heal the mind and stay in tune with our bodies, it really will follow, the body will follow.
There's the mind-body connection.
I was just going to say mind over matter. There's really something to that. And as you mentioned at the beginning, positivity in general really boosts your immune system and can change your actual health. It can change the cells in your body. There's proof of that.
Yeah.
And the positive attitude, Valarie, when you did your treatment, it was, you were willing to post it on social media for people to see the experience, but you brought so much positivity and positive outlook, and you shared that with people. And I really believe that had a ripple effect. You want to tell us a little bit? I don't know if Karla knows exactly what you did.
I just want to start by saying one of the most important things that I learned from my late husband, Mark, was positivity. And even before he was diagnosed with cancer, he used to make me nuts because I always used to say, I'm not a pessimist, I'm just realistic. And he was just always overly optimistic. And sometimes it would make me crazy because I would be dealing with something really rough at the time. And he would say, as long as you have air in your lungs and you have all your limbs. And I'm like, oh, that's all it takes to make you happy. Like, we just need to be breathing. And now I get it. At the time, back then, I didn't get it. If I was stressed, I was just totally immersed in that world. And I would just really get overwhelmed and stressed. And he really would just say, well, we're all alive and got to see another day. And I'm like, stop. He used to make me crazy. But after he was diagnosed with cancer, I saw it on a whole other level because he, even at hospice, he spent a week in hospice, but even at hospice, he was so positive. He would joke around with me and family and friends and the nurses there. It was unbelievable. So I subconsciously took that with me because I did not realize that I got that lesson from him until I looked back at my cancer journey and treatment. And I thought, where did I get that positivity from? And I was a guest on somebody's podcast. It might have been Cancer Talks. I think that's when it hit me that that's where I got it from. I watched him battle this, very aggressive, painful stage 4 esophageal cancer for 9 months, but he was just positive the whole time. And that just stuck with me. So my first part of my treatment was actually a year ago yesterday. And I remember that because I had a double mastectomy with reconstruction on Cinco de Mayo of last year. So I went to the hospital wearing a sombrero and I took pictures and, my doctors thought it was great. It was really funny. And I posted them on social media. And then after my surgery, I put the sombrero back on and my friend Kelly snuck in French fries because they wouldn't let me eat and I was starving. So I put one in my mouth and just took a funny picture pretending it was a cigarette. Like, it was just funny for the picture. But then the second part of my treatment was going to radiation Monday through Friday for 5 weeks. And I remember them giving me the schedule, the printout of the schedule. And I have 4 kids. I'm a single mom. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I have to come to the cancer center every day through the summer. And I have 4 kids at home. But after that initial thought, I was like, I got this. And I thought of a couple t-shirts I had in my closet. And I'm like, I'm going to wear this on the first day. And the first one said, okay, but first let's dance. And then this, I had a few t-shirts already in my closet that I thought it'd be cool to wear those and take pictures every day. And then after the first week, I thought I have to do this for every single radiation treatment. And then I was like, am I going to be, is that possible? Because there's 25 treatments. Do I have 25 shirts? And I didn't, but I started ordering them on Amazon and having friends make them for me. And then I started to take it a step further because I thought, the t-shirts are cool, but I can make this more fun. So I started adding in props. It was like a whole theme that would go with it. So then I started ordering props or finding things around the house or having friends make me bombs. I had a shirt that said fragile, not fragile like a flower, fragile like a bomb. So I brought a flower and, a homemade bomb with me. And it just became a whole thing. And I was getting so much positive feedback about it. And the whole purpose of that was to take the fear out of the treatment. So when I first heard the word mastectomy, and I've been interviewed about this, I really thought I was going to pass out on the floor. So many things just kind of, went into my mind. It was just completely insane. I really felt like I was going to pass out. And then I learned more about it and I found out that reconstruction was an option and that made me feel better. But that word is scary. And I wanted people to see how I was going into my surgery, how I was dealing with it after the surgery. And then even with radiation, I took pictures of the machine and I would sit on the machine and sit there with some kind of, Wonder Woman costume. And I just wanted people to see that, it might not be as bad as you think. And this is how I'm dealing with it. And then the third part of my treatment was last September, having my tubes and ovaries removed. I had a cool t-shirt for that. It said, what did it say? I'm so over it or something. And I had like ovaries with like the middle finger up. It was just funny. I always had some kind of cool shirt, ready to go. And then right after that surgery is when I started the podcast. It was like I just needed the surgeries behind me. And as soon as the last surgery was done, it was like, let's go. I want to start sharing my stories about trauma and grief and cancer and thriving after all of this. And the other thing is just spreading awareness with my posts and my podcast. And I've had people that I haven't seen since grade school reach out and they say, because of you, I scheduled my first mammogram. And that's what this is all about. So I 100% know in my soul that having going into my treatments with a positive attitude and positive mindset really made them better for me. It can only help. And I've said this on one of my other podcasts. I'm not a doctor. I can't sit here and scientifically prove that because I was positive, my treatments, really weren't that awful for me. They really weren't. I danced through all of my treatments and I felt really good. But what I can say is it definitely can't hurt. And being negative can hurt. And I will never forget, I was in the waiting room for one of my radiation treatments, and there was a woman next to me, and one of the radiation technicians came in and said, "Congratulations, today is your last treatment." And I was excited for her. I was just like ready to clap and, sing. And I was just so happy for her. And I looked at her and she was just so upset. She was not happy that it was her last treatment. And I said, "Congratulations on your last treatment." And she said, "Whatever, it's going to come back anyway. I'm just going to die." And I just thought, if people knew how much the cells in our body, how much our bodies listen to our minds, like we just discussed, it's like they say, if you knew, I'm going to mess this up, but if our bodies knew how much our thoughts, affect it, we would never have another negative thought, because it's really true. You would really try to, you would just try to control your thoughts more or change them. I mean, we're human. We're going to have negative thoughts. They pop in our mind, but when a negative thought pops in your mind, you can actually, as a habit, just think of something you're grateful for to counteract it. So, people tell me they're inspired by my pictures and my podcast and my story. And the reason I like that is because the whole point of it is to empower other people. Please tell listeners how they can learn more about Radical Remission, workshops, websites, or any retreats coming up.
Yeah, so we have a lot of ways you can find Radical Remission help. So if you want to come to a workshop, number one, I'll point you to our website. Liz and I, we together have a partnership and we're called the Health Navigators. So if you go to www.healthnavs.com, that's NAVS, healthnavs.com. We list on there all of the virtual workshops we're doing, all of the Radical Hope book clubs that we're doing, and we have a couple of in-person Radical Remission retreats we're doing this summer. The first one is at Omega Institute in June. It's June 17th through the 19th. We will be there in person. It's Rhinebeck, New York. It's a beautiful location. So not only do you get to learn the 10 healing factors and how to implement them into your lives and walk away with a game plan that you can take home and start working on for yourself, but you get the beauty of Omega Institute and the relaxation and
Community.
And the community. Absolutely. The community is huge. You'll be with like-minded people who are also looking to overcome their diagnosis and doing everything in their power. The second one is at Harmony Hill in Union, Washington in late July. So we're going to the West Coast, and it's July 29th through the 31st. And again, similar, you'll learn the 10 healing factors, you'll be in community, and you get a beautiful retreat setting. It is a smaller retreat setting, so it's going to be a private where we're the only ones there. And it's just It's just a separate, different, beautiful location. And Liz and I offer a bunch of other things in our community. So we've got our Health Navigator community, and we've got a membership program that you can get 6 different events for just $40 a month, or you can just pick and choose the events that speak to you, whether it's a Radical Remission event or a different book club that you might want to come to.
Yeah. And obviously Karla and I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people that are, living with a diagnosis or even post-diagnosis, sometimes pre-diagnosis, just to help them not only with the healing factors, but just how to kind of ultimately become that resilient, positive attitude to help them through probably some of the most difficult times in their life that they're going to have. So again, on our website, if you're interested in reaching out to us, we're always happy to schedule people for a complimentary 30-minute, just check in with us and learn more about Radical Remission or any of our offerings.
Can you explain what Health Navigators is? Because that's something separate from Radical Remission.
Yeah, sure. So Radical Remission Project, which you can go to the website radicalremission.com to learn more about that. So that is Dr. Turner's website. And we have been trained by her to be certified teachers and coaches. And so Karla and I formed a business together after the pandemic hit to offer everything virtually, other than, a handful of in-person events throughout the year. There was just so much need during the pandemic that we decided to take it online. And many of our counterparts, the other teachers out there, have not chosen to do work virtually in large groups like that. So that's how the Health Navigators kind of became born, was just through the desire for what's next after. And, certainly people come without doing the workshop, and they'll just join the community because they like that, type of like-minded community.
So to wrap up, my question to both of you is, for anyone, whether it's someone with a cancer diagnosis or some other kind of, health issue they're dealing with, or just for anyone, how would you encourage them to, learn more about Radical Remission, to read the book, and then go from there? Because as I mentioned earlier, I see the need for it for everyone. You do not have to be battling any kind of health condition. It can just, really increase the quality of anybody's life, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, all around. It's just a holistic approach that anybody can use to, improve their lifestyle. So, just as a last word, anything you want to say about Radical Remission or Health Navigators, just to leave the listeners with, anything important you want to add?
There's one thing that I realized I didn't say before. So in talking about my cancer journey, I switched over that integrative oncologist and did all those lifestyle changes. My cancer was stable, but a year and a half later, I had a liver tumor pop up. That's when I made my switch to my integrative oncologist. Within 6 months, that liver tumor was fully resolved, and it's been 6.5 years that I've had no evidence of disease. So I continue to live these factors. So these are a permanent lifestyle change. And I think that's really important, to focus on making these changes, making them permanent changes, and focus on what you're gaining from them, not in what you're giving up. Because what you're gaining is health and longevity and potentially healing. And some of us aren't going to find a cure for our cancer or for our diagnosis. Everybody's journey is going to be different, but we can all find healing. And these factors to help you find healing, which is different from a cure. So reading Radical Hope is something I highly recommend to everyone and anyone. And hope is never a bad idea. Don't let anybody take that away from you. And don't believe the statistics and the prognosis.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. So that reminds me of this Deepak Chopra quote that we have heard over time, that we believe the diagnosis, but not the prognosis. And just keeping in mind that, these stories and these books and in the workshops and everything offer such wide range of hope and such diversity in what worked for people, that it just further proves that you are not a statistic and you are not a number, and you don't need to go through the kind of conventional machine of just following what your doctor says. You obviously can listen to your doctor, but don't ever feel that any human being has the right to put an expiration date on your life. It is your call, and you get to play that role and be in the driver's seat of your own life.
I encourage everyone to check out the books Radical Remission and Radical Hope. And just one more time, if you can let the listeners know of any websites that they can go to find more information about retreats, the workshops.
Sure. So our radicalremission.com will always have any workshop that's available. Karla and I are listed on there for all the virtual stuff. And if anyone else is doing anything, it'll be posted there. And then healthnavs.com. So that's short for Health Navigator. So healthnavs.com. And we have all of our offerings there. If you look on the offerings page, and you'll see more about the one-on-one, not the one-on-one coaching, but I meant the in-person retreats. And if you're on Omega's website or Harmony Hill's website, you can look up those retreat centers and find our registration links there as well. And you can follow us on social media at Health Navigators on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and we can be emailed anytime at info@healthnavs.com.
Liz and Karla, thank you so much for being here with me today. I can't wait to share this information with everyone I know, because I know how much it helped Mark and how much it has helped me.
Thanks, Valarie. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thanks. And thanks for having us dance in the rain with you today.
Yes.